Hello, and welcome back to Kim Reads Continued Wicked, The Charmed Circle, Part 7. Bot could not believe he was headed to the Philosophy Club at last. He'd hoped he wouldn't vomit at a crucial moment. He hoped he would remember the whole thing tomorrow, or at least some kernel of it, despite the headache formerly venging in the hollows at his temples. The place was discreet, though it was known as the best dive in shiz. It hid behind a facade of paneled-up windows. A couple of apes roamed the street in front, bouncing troublemakers ahead of time. Avaric counted the party carefully as they fell from the cab. Shen, Croak, me, Bach, Tibbet, Fierro, and Fanny. 7. Boy, how'd we all fit in the cab. Could hardly fit us, I think. He paid the cabbie and tipped him in some obscure homage still to Amma Clutch, and then pushed to the front of the silent nodding companions. Come on, we're the right age and the right drunk, he said, as he overshadowed face at the window. 7 of us, good sir. The face came forward to the glass and leered at him. The name is Yackle, and I'm not a sir, nor am I good. What kind of are you up to tonight, master fellow? Speaking through the pane was a crone, with random teeth and a shiny white-pink wig slipping westwards off her curly scalp. Kind, said Avaric, then more bravely. Any kind. I mean the tickets, sweetbread. Strutting and strumming on the sprung floor, or strumming in the old wine cellars. The works, said Avaric. You understand house rules, the locked doors, the if you pay, you play policy. Give us 7 and hurry up about it. We're not fools. You never are a fool, said the beastly woman. Well, here you are then come what may, or who may. She affected a stance of virtue, like a painting of a Unia's virgin saint. Enter and be saved. The door swung open, and they went down a flight of uneven brick steps. At the bottom of the flight was a dwarf in a purple burnous. He looked at their tickets and said, What are you stop things from? Out of town? We're all at the university, said Avaric. A motley crew. Well, you've 7 of diamond tickets. See here the 7 red diamonds printed here and here, he said. Have a drink on the house. Watch the girly show and dance a little if you want. Every hour or so the street and door opened next. He pointed to a huge oak door, barred with 2 monstrous timbers and iron hasps. You all go together or you don't go at all. That's the rule of the house. There was a chanteuse singing a send-up of What All's is without Ozma, and teasing with a parrot-colored feather boa. A small band of elves, real elves, tooted and rattled out a tiny accompaniment. Bach had never seen an elf, even though there was a colony of them not far from Rush Margins. How weird, he said, inching forward. They look like hairless monkeys, naked but for little red caps and without any appreciable sex characteristics. They were green as sin. Bach turned to say, Look, Elfie, it's like you had a pass on babies, but he didn't see her and remembered that then she hadn't come, nor had Glinda, apparently. Damn. They danced. The crowd was the most mixed Bach had seen in some time. There were animals, humans, dwarves, elves, and several TikTok things of incomplete or experimental gender. A squadron of well-built blonde boys circulated with tumblers of rock gut squash wine, which the friends drank because it was free. I don't know if I'd want to get any more daring than this, said Fanny to Bach at one point. I mean, look at that hussy of a baboon is almost out of her dress. Perhaps we should call it a night. Do you think? Said Bach. I mean, I'm game, but if you're feeling uneasy. Oh, hurrah, on the way out, he was feeling uneasy himself. Well, let's get Avaric. He's over there nosing up to Shen. But before they could make their way across the crowded dance floor, the elves began to let out a banshee screech, and the singer thrust out her hip and said, That's the mating call, dollies, ladies and gentle friends. We're doing and I mean doing. She glanced at a note in her hand. 5 black clubs, 3 black clubs, 6 red hearts, 7 red diamonds, and on their honeymoon. Isn't it sweet? She simulated a gaggy. 2 black spades, up to the mouth of everlasting bliss, Frades, and gentle hands. Avaric, no, said Bach. But the crone from the front, who called herself Yakel, came through the hall, having apparently locked up the front door for the time being. She remembered the holders of the designated cards and brought them forward with a smile. All right, all rides, all riders on the ride, she said. Here we be, at the shank end of the evening. Lighten up, lads, it's not a funeral, it's an entertainment. It had been a funeral, Bach remembered, trying to invoke the warm, self-effacing spirit of Amaclutch. But the time to back out, if such a time existed, had passed. They were swept through the oak doors along a slightly sloping passage whose walls were padded in red and blue velvet. A merry tune was playing farther on, a dancing, ragged melody. The smell of roasting tim leaves, sweet and softening. You'd almost feel them running up their purplish edges. Yakel led the way. The 23 revelers processed in a confusing state of apprehension, elation, and randiness. The dwarf followed behind. Bach took stock as his best stumbling mind could manage. An erect tiger in hip boots and a cape, a couple of bankers and their evening consorts, all wearing black masks as a protection against blackmail or an aphrodisiac. A party emerged from Ev and Fleon in town on business. A couple of women, rather long in the tooth, beckoned in costume jewelry. The honeymoon couple were Gillikins. Bach hoped that his crowd wasn't gawping as much as the Gillikins were. As he glanced around, only Avaric and Shin Shin looked eager, and Fierro possibly because he hadn't yet grasped what this was all about. The others looked more than a little squeamish. They entered a small dark theater in the round, with the pace of the public divided into 6 stalls. Above, the ceiling was lost to stony blackness. Tapers fluttered, and a hollow music issued through fissures in the wall, increasingly an unearthly stir of dislocation and otherness. The stalls circled and faced the central stage, which was enshrouded in black drapes. The stalls were separate from one another by vertical strips of latticed wood and slats of mirror. All the parties were being mixed up, all friends and partners separated. Was there an sense in the air too? It seemed to make Bach's mind split in half, like a husk, and allowed a tender, complacent mind to emerge. The softer, more brutal aspect, the private attention, the surrendering self. He felt he was knowing less and less, and it was more and more beautiful to do so. Why he had been alarmed. He was sitting on a stool, and around him in the stall sat, almost preternally near, a man in a black mask. An asp he hadn't noticed before, the tiger whose breath ran hot and meaty on his neck. A beautiful schoolgirl, or was that the bride on her honeymoon? Did the whole stall went tilt forward, like gently swung back him? Anyway, they leaned together, the central dies, an altar of veals and sacrifices. Bach loosened his collar and then his belt, felt the gingery apprentice between heart and stomach and the resulting stiffening apparatus below that. The music of pipes and whistles, a slowing, or was that he watched and waited and breathed so slowly that the secret area beside himself uncloaked himself, where nothing mattered. The dwarf, in a darker hood now, approached on the stage. He could see from his vantage point that all the stalls, but the revelers in separate stalls, couldn't see another. The dwarf leaned and reached a hand there, welcoming, beckoning. He encouraged from one stall the figure of a woman, from another man. Was it Tibet? And from the stall where Bach sat, gestured to the tiger. Bach felt faintly sorry not to watch himself as he watched the door pass, a smoking vial beneath the nostrils of 3 acolytes, and helped them remove their clothes. There were shackles and a tray of scented oils and embalmings, and a chest whose contents were still in shadow. The dwarf bound black blindfolds around the heads of the scholars. The tiger was pacing on floors and growling softly, tossing his head back and forth in distress or excitement. Tibet, for it was he, though nearly out of consciousness, was made to lie on his back on the floor of the stage. The tiger strode over him, stood while the dwarf and his assistants lifted Tibet and tied his wrists together around the tiger's chest and his ankles around the tiger's pelvis. So Tibet hung beneath the tiger's belly, like a trussed pig, his face lost in the tiger's chest hair. The woman was sat on a sloping stool, almost like a huge tilting bowl, and the dwarf tucked something aromatic running up the shadowy regions. Then the dwarf pointed to Tibet, who was beginning to twist and moan into the tiger's chest. "Let X be the unknown god," said the dwarf, poking Tibet in the ribs. The dwarf then slapped the tiger on his flank with a riding crop, and the tiger strained forward, positioning his head between the woman's legs. "Let Y be the dragon of time in its cave," said the dwarf, hitting the dragon. As he laced the woman in a half-shell, stroking her nipples with a glowing salve, he handed her riding crop, with which she could lash out the tiger's flanks and face. "And let Z be the Cumbric witch, and let us see if she exists tonight." The crowd drew near, almost participants themselves, and the musky sense of adventure made them tear at their own buttons and nibble their own lips, leaning in. "Such are the variables in our own equation," said the dwarf as the room darkened even further. "So now, let the true clandestine study of knowledge begin." That's the end of that chapter. Bye.